opera in Paris. It's probably one of the best, it's the best opera in the world.
C'était la volonté de Charles Garnier, de faire un monument dans le monument.
Même quand je vais encore à l'opéra, j'ai toujours la larme à l'œil.
Welcome to a new edition. I'm Nadia Sharbi, and this week you join us outside one of Paris's most iconic monuments as we mark the 350th anniversary of France's opera. Created in 1669 by the Sun King Louis XIV, the world's first ever permanent dance academy now consists of the 30-year-old Bastille Opera and this, the Palais Garnier or Garnier Palace. Together, they make for some dizzying number crunching. Take a look.
Custom says that at least 100 people are needed to raise the curtain at the iconic cultural landmark. The Paris Opera has an annual budget of 220 million euros, the biggest in Europe, far more than the Royal Opera House in London and La Scala in Milan. Each year, more than 800,000 people attend some 30 performances, operas or ballets. The two opera houses, Bastille and Garnier, have more than 4,600 seats combined, compared to 3,800 at the Met in New York and 1,700 at the Bolshoi in Moscow. In terms of staff, there are 1,800 employees working in 50 different trades. Among them, 170 musicians, 100 singers, and 154 dancers, including 16 prima ballerinas. These dancers can change their pointe shoes 4 times during one performance, totaling 10,000 pairs each season. The Paris Opera Academy passes down centuries of expertise to new generations. Each year, it trains 40 young artists in various artistic mediums, from singing to music.
Well, we start our visit 5 floors below the stage in the capstan, a maritime word like so many used here in the wings, as ship-towing methods were once employed to move the heavy stage set. Well, let's find out more now about the history of the Paris Opera. A palace, no less. Named after its architect, Charles Garnier, Paris's famed opera is one of the most expensive buildings constructed during the Second Empire. To the patchwork of gilded styles, from Baroque to Renaissance, with a nod to Versailles, was added a more contemporary touch in 1964 with the majestic ceiling painted by Chagall, an ode to colour and music.
The simple yellow expanse became the background for Chagall's take on Giselle and Swan Lake. He included multiple references to his favourite composers.
But the opera's regal credentials predate the Garnier Palace. Kept safely inside this tissue paper is a gold-embroidered ballet costume worn by King Louis XIV, who's thought to have viewed the first opera given in Paris at the tender age of 7 and went on to create the Royal Academy of Music in 1669. A fire destroyed the Academy almost a century later, and the Paris Opera also became the scene of an assassination plot against Napoleon III.
The emperor's hat was hit by a bullet, and as the record indicates, the performance was not interrupted. The show must go on already in the 19th century.
The incident having by no means altered Napoleon's love of the opera, the emperor commissioned the building we know today, a monument showcased by the unobstructed perspective of the Opera Avenue that replaced what had been a cutthroat maze of little streets. Today, the Garnier Palace's reputation is forged by myth as much as music. This box is reserved for all eternity for the opera's famous phantom. And a dent on the grand staircase's 13th step also comes with a haunting story.
A ballerina is said to have been dancing on the skylight above the grand staircase, and when the glass broke, bringing down the ballerina, her head hit the 13th step.
The opera is also home to another oddity, a lake of sorts that lies within its depths. In 1862, at the start of Garnier's enterprise, workers hit a water table, flooding the site. To contain the stream, the architect built a concrete water tank that eventually played a key role in the edifice's structure and acoustics.
Garnier created a ballast tank in the central building, as you would to balance a ship, thus stabilizing the two parts of the edifice.
The tank is now used regularly by firefighters who train here for rescue operations in a rare bubble of operatic silence. Well, to give us the behind-the-scenes tour, I'm joined by author Claudine Colozzi, who's written a book on this venerable edifice, and we meet in the aptly named Grand Staircase. Thank you very much for showing us around. Now, this is the first thing you see when you walk into the opera, and it certainly packs a punch.
That was Charles Garnier's intention, to create a monument within the monument, because at the time, Parisian high society would come here to be seen. So the architect imagined these little balconies where women could really show themselves to their advantage. He called this the Napoleon III style, after the man who commissioned it. But it isn't really a specific style. It's more of a combination of influences sourced from other opera houses.
And on the night of the inauguration, obviously the architect Charles Garnier was here, but there's a surprising anecdote about that moment.
Yes, just like the other 2,156 spectators that night, Garnier was asked to pay for his seat. The reason was political. His patron, Napoleon III, died before the monument opened. And it was actually President Macmahon who inaugurated the building, leaving Garnier in the uncomfortable position of being associated with a previous regime. So he was made to pay, quite literally. Having said that, at the interval, Garnier was awarded the Legion of Honor and was given a standing ovation he deserved.
So he did get some thanks. Let's continue our visit now. So we've now come behind the scenes, behind the stage, in fact. Tell us about this hidden room.
We're here in the dance foyer, an area that's off limits to the public. Spectators only get a glimpse of it once a year, during the company procession. It's a tradition here at the Paris Opera. The entire company, including every single ballet student, turns out on stage. And the curtain is raised all the way back to this room. The rest of the time, dancers come here to warm up before going on stage.
And there's a very specific hierarchy in the ballet, starting with the petit rat, the little rats. Tell us about the terminology.
Well, that term of little rat is used to describe any student of the opera ballet school, boy or girl. The nickname was coined at a time when the dance school was still within the opera walls. It's since been transferred to Nanterre, and it's thought to be inspired by the sound of little dancers' slippers on the wooden floorboards of the rehearsal rooms above, like little mischief or rodents.
In one of the boxes, and initially the show was as much here in the audience as it was on the stage.
Yes, that's right. For a long time, the house lights were left on throughout the performance because a real show was happening here rather than on stage. People would come here to be seen, to host their friends. During the interval, the men would leave the box to call on their favourite ballerina. The women, meanwhile, were expected to stay put and entertain. And by decking out the entire house in flattering red velvet, Garnier ensured that it would look their best.
And there's one guest who not only had access to one of these boxes, but also had his own lift built. Is that right?
Yes, in the 1920s, the Prince Aga Khan III was an avid opera lover, but health issues made it difficult for him to walk up and down the stairs to access his box. So he had his own private hydraulic lift built. After the Aga Khan's death, the lift fell into disrepair, but was recently refurbished and is now used for wheelchair users.
Now, despite its rich history and even richer decor, the Paris Opera continues to work on drawing in spectators and in remaining relevant in an increasingly virtual age. Let's take a look now at the challenges it faces today.
At this performance of Tosca at the Bastille Opera in Paris, seniors make up most of the audience. In line, the number of those under 25 can be counted on two hands.
There aren't enough young people here, but that's simply because tickets are very expensive for students.
I know a few young people who like the opera. We're a minority in the audience, but we're here.
The average age of audience members here is 46. Although this number has dropped over the years, it's still seen as too old by some at the institution, which is looking to boost youth attendance.
The future of the Paris Opera depends on attracting new audience members. We see how the Met in New York is struggling to fill seats. This is because the audience has stayed the same, and it's disappearing as it gets older.
To draw a younger crowd, the Paris Opera has lowered ticket prices for those under 28. It also offers discounts for those under 40, but only for certain performances. Normally, full-price tickets cost between 100 and 200 euros, a steep price that the institution doesn't want to raise. Helping to achieve this goal are growing donations and sponsorships. But the institution's state budget has been cut. To balance its books, the Paris Opera is considering reforms, including layoffs. The opera also wants to revamp its programming, hoping more diverse performances will draw a more diverse audience.
The opera doesn't communicate well with the youth because that would diminish its elite status. And the opera's identity is really tied to this idea of elitism.
As part of its identity makeover, the Paris Opera is building a new stage at the Bastille location. The add-on will showcase the Academy's younger artists. The opera has also started filming its performances and sending the recordings to movie theaters around France. Now, for the price of 10 to 30 euros, people all across the country can afford and have access to the National Opera.
Well, having made our way all the way up to the stunning rooftop of the Palais Garnier, it's time to leave this edition. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.